intimidating to definitely big shoes to fill when I got here almost 2 years ago. And
Is it almost 2 years?
Almost 2 years. It is almost 2 years. But the good news is next Tuesday, Ali is going to be teaching this class. So really such a treat for you guys to have two different styles of learning, and then you could compare notes. And
well, I just want to say one thing real quick. It's less teach. No, that's okay. It's less teaching. I'm going to share with you my personal story of making Aliyah. But so any questions Tuesday, that you have about Israel, I mean, I don't know if I can answer them about anything around Israel. Please come with them.
So next Tuesday is Yom HaAtzmaut, the 75th anniversary of the State of Israel. So what a beautiful day to celebrate and to have this open conversation about Israel and what it's like to live there and share your heart with them. Okay, so today is also a special day. This is a really intense time of year for many, many reasons. On the Jewish calendar, we're in the period of Sfirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, 7 weeks from Passover to Shavuot, which really has an energy of growth and change, and every day has a different, there's Sfirat, there's different, mystical understandings of each day and how we could grow from a spiritual perspective. So that is definitely in the air, whether you know it or not. You're here learning at a very good time where you could probably absorb a little bit more from a spiritual point of view. And also today in Israel, but really throughout the world, but especially in Israel, we commemorate Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day. In Israel, I just received a really powerful video, which I'm happy to share, of the siren being sounded. And you even see like the main... Right? Did I put it this? Okay. So yeah, okay. It's so fabulous because you even see like the main highway, and everyone the cars slowing down, and everyone getting out of their cars, and you see, all different ages and stages, young people, old people. Everyone is just sitting there silently for a solid minute. Is it 2 minutes today? 2 minutes today, and then next week there's another siren. On Monday night it's 1 minute, and on Tuesday morning it's 2 minutes. And I'm going to be in Israel for Monday and Tuesday, so I'm really excited. I'm so excited that I shake when I think about it. Just the power of these days and how we put so much. There's so much that we put into this. It's not like in America when we have Memorial Day weekend, it's usually like a barbecue and I don't know, like. Buy a mattress on sale. I'm not American, so for me, in Canada, like our Memorial Day was like you wear a red poppy, but I never even understood why. Do you guys know that about Canadians? In Flanders, the poppies grow. Anyways, so but it really wasn't attached to anything that related to me. But in Israel, every single Israeli knows somebody that was impacted by a terrorist attack, a war, a fallen soldier. So when you go to Har Herzl, to the mountain where all the soldiers and all the fallen are buried, you can't really walk through it without connecting to it, because Golda Meir and Theodore Herzl and the people that built the country, they're all buried there, and they mean this is our family. So you feel it in a very different way in Israel. So that's coming up. So this is a really intense week of emotions. There's such highs and such lows. And really next week, Monday, Tuesday, it's been a long time. I've been out of Israel for over a decade. And I can't remember, I think the last time I was in Israel, I probably was like very busy with little kids, and I don't remember feeling it as much as now. I'm gonna be a woman going without little kids and really just being in this moment where we transition between our greatest grief and our greatest joy. And there's like, and I have the task of helping 150 women under my guidance transition between those days. Like we have such a solemn event, and then we switch gears and we're having the biggest dance party of our lives. And it's really hard to hold such different, opposite emotions. But the truth is, don't we all do this every single day? Every single day as Jewish women, as moms, we are holding such joys and such pains. Just the fact of being a mother is joy and pain, right? Sometimes our greatest joy is our greatest pain. So I think we could all relate to that. It's the both and it's the holding it all together. So we're gonna focus a little bit on what today is Yom HaShoah, and I'm going to tie it into the lesson, the chapter that we're at. So yes, and I'm sorry, I feel like my back was kind of to you guys, but
especially meaningful Israeli just flew over outfits this morning.
I watched just a little video clip of the March of the Living with all the dignitaries from Israel. It was maybe the chief educator of Israel. I'm not sure what his title is, but he was speaking in Birkenau this morning, and with all the survivors that had come for the March of the Living, and they had just finished the march, the actual march, and it's really powerful. So yeah, on the Israel side, yeah, it's incredible, and it's painful, and we're here, and many are not. It's just this constant, dichotomy. Okay, so we're going to try to bring some of the lessons and some of the timeliness of this time of year and today back into this book. So the next chapter or two, I'm going to just try to overview some of two chapters in one. So one of them is speech, and one of them is silence. And I'd like to just tie it around to the Torah portion that we read this week, and whoever was here for the Parsha class, we spoke about how Aaron lost his two sons at the height of their joy and celebration. It was the inauguration, this very celebratory time where they were starting service in the tabernacle during their travels in the desert. And at the height of this first day, this inauguration, Aaron's two sons died. And the words that it says in the Torah, after Moses tries to bring comfort and bring perspective and respond, it says two words, Vayidom Aharon, and Aaron was silent. And we had a whole conversation about this, of what does it mean to be silent? Sometimes there really just are no words, right? Sometimes we're so overcome with grief that there's nothing that anyone could say that could really bring comfort to the moment. And sometimes, we spoke about all the different things like that Aaron might have been going through, but he chose silence. That was his response. And that might be, so let's talk about the ability to talk and the ability to use our mouth for power to build worlds, and could also destroy worlds with our mouth, the epicenter of spirituality really in our bodies, right? It's really where the soul and the body connect, is really the mouth. It is the focal point, the most powerful place, right? Where you take all your ideas and you put things out into the world. Is there a more powerful place than the mouth, right? It is such a focal point. And we know that when God created us, nothing is by chance. Look at the face. Two eyes, take in a lot, watch. Two ears, listen, hear, integrate things into you. But one mouth, and that mouth has gates to it. We have our teeth, we have our lips. It's almost like saying, listen, take in, experience, feel things out, but only speak half as much. You want to say something, hold back, take a walk around the block. Maybe you'll feel differently afterwards. In fact, just this week, I was speaking to a life coach. She's actually a dating coach. And I'm working with her on a situation, someone that is going through a dating situation. And she gave me this great advice. She said, whatever response you say, pause, don't press send, okay? Take out all judgment, read it again and again until there's nothing that could be held against you. So this is what I advise somebody. That's what you should do. Let's read it through. Let's take out all judgment, anything harsh, take it out. And once we really, really took out anything that could be incriminating or, harsh or negative, we sent it. Now, it was even after pulling half of it out, it was still way too harsh. And the expression, less is more, right? The less you say, you'll never regret something that you haven't said, right? Usually. You will usually not regret what you haven't said, but very often you will regret what you have said, okay? And it was just a small example. And if I didn't think to ask her and to read it through to her, I just would have pressed send, because I'm just very activated by the moment. And to pause and to hold back, that's actually greatness. So I'd like to share a little bit, I'm trying to tie in this topic with some of my personal family stories. So I'm going to pass around 3 books, okay? One of them is my grandmother, my Babi Gutsa. This is her story in a nutshell. I sent out on some of the chats her testimony, right? It's a podcast that I recorded with her. It was a recording that she did. She spoke to my community in Portland. There were like 150 people in the room. And thank God we got a really good recording. So we put that onto a podcast. You can get it on Spotify, Anchor, Google, anywhere you get your podcast. So I sent that out today. If anybody wants to listen, I listened to it this morning. So nice. If you make it to the end, she sings, "You Light Up My Life." I was like, I'm listening to it during carpool this morning, and I'm crying, just crying, like hearing my Babi, because she used to always sing that song to me. You light up my life. You give me hope to carry on. And she was 98 years old when that was recorded. She lived until 100. It was amazing until the day of her death. Thank God, what a gift. Her mind was so intact. Like she was sharing memories from almost, close to 100 years. It was such a gift. And what a gift it was to be, I was 39 years old. You guys know the story. I flew to Montreal. I was flown to Montreal by an organization. They wanted me to come and speak for a Shabbaton. So they flew me there, and I wasn't going to go. Like they really didn't have like a big budget. It wasn't really worth schlepping all the way to Canada. I had just got back from Israel. I was still jet lagged. And I asked my father, "Do you think I should go?" And he's like, "Nah, stay home with your family. It's fine. Recover from your trip." And something in me was like, I just want to see Babi. Like if I could get to Montreal, I could like hop on a train and be in Toronto in 6 hours, and it'll be like a plate, So I called my Babi and I said, "Babi, it's going to be my 39th birthday. Would you like to spend it together?" So we made a whole plan. We were going to get our nails done. We were going to go to Dairy Treats for lunch in Toronto. She's living at my parents in Toronto. So I flew Sunday morning to Toronto, and when my father picked me up from the airport, instead of our whole day that we had planned, because it was just going to be my birthday with my Babi, my father took me to the hospital because she was just taken to the hospital that morning with congenitive heart failure and congestive heart failure. And I got to spend the last day of her life holding her hand and her singing me that song, and looking at pictures when she was such a miracle. She was such a miracle that she survived. I mean, you'll have to listen to her testimony because she speaks about a lot of the miracles that did happen to her. After the war, which really the hardest part of her whole story, because she's always finding the light. Like she went through such hell. She lived through losing her whole family in the Warsaw Ghetto. She was taken to Majdanek and then to Auschwitz. She was altogether in 5 concentration camps. She lived through the Death March, just being marched and marched. Like she'll talk about finding a barrel, an empty barrel to stick her head in when they lay down at night on this march. So many people it was freezing cold. They had nothing. They were in tattered prison, striped pajamas from Auschwitz, and that's all they had. She definitely speaks about how the hardest part of her whole journey was after the war. Liberation was the most painful thing. She finally made it back to her town, Warsaw, the city where she came from. She came from a family of over 100 family members, like cousins, uncles, aunts. She was the oldest of 7. She had many younger siblings, a beautiful family, the Gordon family, very well known. And after the war, she never saw a familiar face again, not even a neighbor, not a distant relative. She never saw a familiar face again. So the fact that she was able to make her way to Lodz, which was a center where a lot of Holocaust survivors were congregating and giving strength to each other, and she found my Zadie over there as her second husband, because her first marriage was in the ghetto without her family at terrible times. I'm going to talk about that in a sec. So she met my Zadie Lipa. They got married. They had 2 children, which was a miracle. a lot of women after Auschwitz, after starvation, after the terrible things that happened to their bodies, a lot of women could not have children. She did not have her period for 2 years, right? There's, you know, debates whether it was just natural through starvation that women stopped having their periods. Some people say that the Nazis put something in the food so that they wouldn't have to deal with it. But who knows what it was, but I mean, you know, they were skeletons of people, their bodies were not functioning. So so it was really a miracle that she was able to have my father in the DP camp. Many of you met my dad. He was just here till Monday. My mom and my dad were here for Pesach. My father was born in the DP camp in Ulm, Germany, right after the war, which was a miracle. My grandmother had a C-section in the DP camp, in the hospital there, which, and you know, back in those days, 75 years ago, there was sanitation wasn't as it is today. And, you know, it was a very big operation. So she was not able to nurse her child. My father at his bris let out such a loud cry that was like unnatural. He was whisked away to the hospital. Dana, I love, Dana was walking home from Shul last Shabbos with us, and she asked my father some stories, and he said that my father he was taken to the hospital. What did he have? Like diphtheria? Like he had a really bad illness, like diphtheria. So my grandfather, my Zaidi Lipa, he stayed up through the night by my father, newborn baby's bedside, dipping his 2 fingers into water and into my father's mouth the entire night. My father was nursed to health because my grandmother couldn't nurse him. He was nursed by his aunt who had a baby around the same time in the same camp. So his aunt, I mean, he grew up with cousins that were like siblings. Anyway, so on the testimony, I hope you guys will listen to it. My grandmother says, so thank God I had 2 children and 7 grandchildren. And back in the day, and this was only like a couple of years ago, she said something like 25 great-grandchildren, but I counted today, and her 34th great-grandchild is expected to come within the month. So it's like, you know, Kanai Nahara, thank God. So that's just a little bit, but I do want to bring it back to this topic, and we could pass these around. These are both sets of grandparents and their stories in a nutshell. You could just like flip through and see the pictures. So I just want to talk about science. Yes.
I just would like to talk a little bit about my dad. My dad was also a Holocaust survivor.
Stand up, or maybe come over here so that they can see you. Well, today's is it his yahrzeit?
Tonight starts his yahrzeit.
Wow.
So I know, right?
Right over here.
So I don't know exactly. I mean, he was just a light. Was a really, really sometimes I forget such horrible things happened to him because, you know, he just lived with such joy and such love. And the uniqueness of my dad was that, and I tell my dad's story at the museum and I take students around, but what was so special about him is that even though he was 60 pounds, when he was liberated from Dachau, he had also gone on a death march. He was in 5 different slave labor camps. You wouldn't have known it. I mean, you wouldn't have known it. And what was so beautiful about him is that he loved all people. It didn't matter what color you were. It didn't matter what faith you were. It didn't matter that you were German or that you were Polish. It mattered what was in your heart. And so he always judged people for who they were. And I think that is it's pretty unique. And he just spread his light and love. And it was such a blessing for us and really a defeat for the Nazis because they could not rob him of his goodness and his compassion and his love.
The first thing you said to me about your dad all those years ago was never angry.
No, I never.
So unusual for someone.
No, he was not angry. He thought he was the luckiest man in the world. He was a carpenter. He wasn't that, like we were not like rolling in money or anything like that. But you would have thought we were because whatever he had, he so appreciated, and I appreciate it as well. And I mean, it's just a blessing. I feel blessed. I'm a miracle. He was a miracle. You're a miracle. My kids are miracles, and one of the things he said in his testimony is that they asked him, I don't know exactly what they asked him, but they asked him something about like, how did he recover? How did he know that he would live on or whatever? And he said, when my grandson Jeremy was born, I knew that we were going to make it, that we were going to thrive, that we were, you know, like going to continue from generation to generation. So,
What's his name?
His Avram David.
Do you know what his father
or Hennek? Hennek was his father.
Abraham David Ben Hennek? His soul should have an elevation.
And how ironic that he should die on Yom HaShoah to join the souls of his family. Right.
Yes, that's so powerful.
Thank you.
He's been gone already. He died. Yeah.
Elaine?
Yes.
And before you sit down, I have a very unique position to talk about. Sister is the United States Director of the Auschwitz Museum in Auschwitz.
Wow.
And she called me from Poland. She's in Poland right now. And she called me early this morning and she went on the march.
Wow.
And I have pictures and it really got to me. She woke me up. She says, I'm sorry, but look at this. And you know, she went from Auschwitz to
Birkenau.
It's today. It
Wow.
was today.
Yeah.
Wow. I just was thinking of both of your ancestors, you know, and here she is. She's marching for life. And they were trying to march us to death. So very emotional.
Wow.
Your stories, but my sister is there. And
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
Wow. He died in 2002, so it was at
21 years.
21. It seems like yesterday.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit.
Thank you.
So, you know, in today's day and age, whenever we get a paperclip, we need some sort of healing and therapy and different things that to help us. You know, I'm saying a paperclip meaning for everything, we need something, right? We're a very emotionally challenged, probably. I don't even know, maybe we have almost a therapist over here. It's a generation that needs a lot of healing. I'm going to give a plug for this Thursday night. There's a free event here, Rosh Chodesh event for women. All of you are invited, where we actually have 2 healers coming. One is a clinical therapist, Ali's daughter, Hannah Began. She's going to be sharing some tools and tips for healing from a therapeutic point of view. And the other woman that's coming to share is a doctor of
Physical therapy.
Physical therapy. She's a physical therapist that actually specializes in pelvic floor. And I've been to her many times, and she actually does some serious spiritual healing while she's working on your body. So she's gonna come, and just kind of expect the unexpected with her. Hannah's like, what am I gonna say after her? And I'm like, you'll be very relatable. She's very up there in the, very spiritual. So just like, if you're coming, just be brave. You might have to move your body a little bit, but it's excellent. Just a warning. So that's, and thank God we have a lot of tools nowadays to deal with all the pain that is surfacing. There's a lot of pain and a lot of trauma that's surfacing. Do you want to say why don't you talk about Thursday? Because you just mentioned tonight. Oh yeah, I'll do that a bit. So I just want to share just one more layer of the past generation. I'm assuming that it was the same for your father. That somehow, without any tools, without any therapy, because therapy was not, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there were therapists, but it wasn't accessible. It wasn't spoken about. It was so taboo. So everything was, but we just didn't, but how is it possible that these people that were holding so much trauma in their bodies, in their minds, crying, screaming, nightmares at night, carried on? You said your father was never angry. He had love. He built a new life. How is it possible? It's unfathomable to us that really need a lot of help for everything. We really need, like, whether it's this type of healing or that module or whatever it is, or medication, and none of that was accessible to them. So my father once told me a story about the healing of his mother's journey, that she never spoke about the Holocaust. It was very normal for survivors to carry all the pain, all the stories. They didn't talk about it. It wasn't until, until maybe their kids were old enough to start asking, or maybe until they became grandchildren and they realized we're going to need to tell these stories so that the future knows, so this never happens again. But I would say, and Doris, correct me if I'm wrong, for the first maybe decade, 2 decades afterwards, it was like silence. Like, when were the first Holocaust books and movies, and when did Schindler's List come out? Decades later. So there was this silence that kind of just, it was like this unspoken silence, kind of like this pact to not talk about what they experienced. So have you seen the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze? Okay, I know. It has there. Yes, we all know that movie. So I mean, I just recently watched that movie on a flight, and I mean, it's an old movie from maybe the 70s.
No,
I'm not sure. But if you know, it's all about souls and ghosts of souls. So the story goes that my father saw the movie with his sister and my grandmother. And it was the first time in all her decades since the Holocaust that she went into a depression. She didn't leave her room for 3 days. She wouldn't get out of bed. They didn't know what to do. Like, should we call a doctor? Like, they would bring her food. She barely took a sip, barely took a bite. She went into this depression for 2-3 days, 1990, until she was able to pull herself out. She got out of her room and she never spoke another word about it. It was like, there was like this silent, like the movie, because if you remember the movie and you see like the neshamas, you literally see the souls, right, that are kind of hovering. It just brought everything back, and she just didn't know how to deal with it. But she just dealt with it on her own without speaking to anyone and carried on. That was the only breakdown she had since the Holocaust. That was how she just couldn't take it and needed to shut down and get right back up. So our family was given a gift about 15 years ago, about 10 years before my grandmother passed, 10, 12 years. My father, his sister, my grandmother were on their way to a wedding. And it was a wedding of a friend of the family that they grew up with in the Laurentian Mountains. So we're from Montreal. So like in New York, you go to the Catskill Mountains. In Montreal, everyone went to the Laurentians, right? Beautiful, good air for the summers. People had summer houses there. And there were a lot of immigrants that would come and congregate in the same area. So there was a family that my father grew up with, knew the kids really well, and they're going to this wedding of their child. And on the way to the wedding, my grandmother said, I have to tell you guys a secret. And it was 70 years that she kept this secret only to herself. It was 25 years after my grandfather had already passed away. She had promised my grandfather on the day of their wedding in the DP camp that she would not share her story, that she was married and she had her first love in the Warsaw Ghetto. And we knew nothing about this. So she says on the way to the wedding, this is not our friends, this is our family. What a gift that was. So I'm just gonna. So this is my, you guys could see, this is my grandmother, my Babi Gutta.
What does it mean, the sentence you just said? This is not my friend, it's the family.
This was her family. The wedding that they were going to was not their friend from the Laurentian Mountains. This was like a cousin, or it was probably a niece or a nephew of her first husband, whose name, so Felix, Gutta and Felix. And over here, even in this book, when this book was published, it doesn't say that they were married. It says boyfriend and girlfriend. They met when she was 15, dated 5 years, engaged in 1939, and wed in 1941. It doesn't have the full story. She will speak about it a little bit in her testimony. So she just started speaking about it a couple of years ago, like a couple of years before she passed. If anyone wants to pass it around, it's so beautiful, and you can flip through the book. The front page of the book is so cute. I know, it's so cute.
They didn't have children. There were no children?
And no children. They dated for a couple of years. They were, you know, they were courting each other, going to movies. They were in the same youth group. And when she came home one day from work, she worked outside the Warsaw Ghetto. She would come back every night, and she was really very blessed in a way to be working outside the ghetto, because if her family needed food or medications or whatever, she was able to smuggle things into the ghetto. It was like you were very lucky if you had a pass to go out inside and out of the ghetto. The ghetto was terrible. People were dying on the streets. She speaks about children lying on the streets with swollen stomachs. Her father died of, he needed a certain medication. He died in the ghetto. And she talks about how they, like the Chaver Kadisha, like the burial, the Jewish men came and they like literally threw his body into a cart, like kind of like a sardine with so many other bodies. They don't know where he was buried. I mean, there were mass graves, 100,000 people buried in the Warsaw Ghetto cemetery, because it was such a time of, you know, there were lots of diseases and it was a terrible time. So she lived through all of that. And when she came to her home after work one day, her whole family was gone. They were all taken to Auschwitz. Everyone died in Auschwitz. So she sat on the steps of her building and she cried, just didn't even know where to go. It wasn't even a thought that she would go to her boyfriend's house, because in those days, like that wasn't a thing. But eventually she came to her boyfriend's house and she said, I don't know where to go. And they said, you'll stay here with us. And she would never consider staying in the house unmarried with her boyfriend. So that very night, in the middle of the night, they put up a chuppah. They had a few witnesses, no one that she knew, no wedding dress, no nothing, and they married her off. So she speaks about how that first marriage saved her life, because her first husband, Felik, he had a special skill. He knew how to make fur collars, and he taught her that skill. She didn't think she could do it. It was very, very detailed. And she just said, first, she said, I can't do this. And he very patiently taught her the skill. And when she got to the concentration camp, they said, who could do a special skill? She stepped forward. It saved her life. It kept saving her life. She went through so many different work situations, but work, you know, what does it say on the work will set you free? If you had a skill, you have a chance to live, and that's what saved her life. He was taken when they got to their first concentration camp, Majdanek. She was taken to life, and he was taken to death. She never saw him again after that. Yeah, but he had some siblings that survived. One to South Africa. The book is called No Road for Me to Africa, because his siblings actually wrote this book. Could you imagine? Like, we didn't know that this was part of our family history. Crazy story. My parents live in Toronto. Not far from where my parents live is one of his nephews. So around my grandmother's deathbed that I was privileged to be at for that last day of her life was also her nephew, who meant so much to her. That was not a part of her inner circle until just recently. So I'm going to bring it back to our topic of silence. Okay, there are so many reasons why she would remain silent. She gave her word to her husband. We're in the here and now. Is there any benefit of talking about the past? Is it going to serve us well? We're trying to build a future, right? And you guys, as docents, you could probably answer that. I mean, first of all, we can never question why Holocaust survivors did what they did, right? I mean, my other grandmother, she became a gambler. Right? No, seriously. My grandfather, this is my other side, my mother's parents. My grandfather, my Zaidi Usher, he was a workaholic. He was a butcher by profession, very, very successful. He made millions of dollars. He was never home. That was his escape mechanism. And my grandmother took those millions of dollars and kept gambling it away. Right? They both had their escapes, and in a way, we're like, why? Like, why would they run away? But we can understand that. We all run away. It might be an escape on our phone. It might be, we all have our drugs of choice. They had to have coping mechanisms, and we can never ask any questions like, why? Why did they make those choices, right? They had a lot of healing to do, but didn't have the tools to do it in a way that we would probably do it nowadays. So we understand the need for silence. Now I want to bring in some teachings and Judaism about silence. So I'm going to be skipping right now the chapter of speech. We're going to go back to that when we come back together maybe next week or in about 2 weeks. Also, not this Shabbat I'm teaching, but the next Shabbat, Malka Lynn Bright is going to be giving the Parsha class while I'm away, and she's going to be focusing on the laws of speech. So that is very timely with the Torah portion about leprosy. And so that's also coming up. It all really ties in together. So in the book of Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, it does speak a lot about speech and about silence. Now, what does it sound to you when you think silence, when you think someone that's very possibly introverted, does not speak up, does not stand up for themselves? Give me a word. What do you feel? Is there like a weakness there? Like what is it? No, Marcy, give me.
I don't think that's weak. I just think you're giving other people space.
Okay, good. Anything else? Okay, who actually gets more, think about a classroom setting. Okay, think about your child, or if your child is an introvert or an extrovert, which one tends to succeed more out there in the world, in school, at a party, at a social setting?
The more outgoing.
The more outgoing person will get further, okay? So, which is just, that's the reality of this world. You have to kind of put yourself out there to get anywhere in life. And Judaism is saying exactly what you're saying, Marcy. There is so much more power in silence. We need to evaluate. We need to evaluate what this is. We know that words have power, but there's also so much negative power in words. And silence is a vehicle for wisdom. Okay, that's what Pirkei Avot is teaching us. It's a vehicle for wisdom. So I'm going to teach you guys a new saying, a new phrase. Okay, so in Hebrew, this 2 words, erech apayim. Okay, does anyone know those words? Because yeah, we sing it in the 13 attributes of God, right? Hashem, Karachum, Dachanim, Erech, Apayim. Does that sound familiar? At Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, we say it a lot during that time of year. The 13 attributes of God, of mercy, and we say that God is Erech Apayim. Now, what does that mean? Okay, so technically it means slow to anger. Okay, but actually the words Erech Apayim, it means, and it might sound a little funny, lengthen our nose. Lengthen our nose. What does that mean? So it means to lengthen the distance between stimulus and response. Okay, there is a power there. We've spoken about this, Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response. There is that space, and in that space is the power to choose our response, and in that response lies our growth and our freedom. We've shared that amazing, powerful quote, really, to think about it. That space is where us as human beings, that's the powerhouse, right? That space, the pause is the power. Okay, so we're talking over here about God. We're saying God is slow to anger. You know, we want God to be slow to anger. We don't want God to react harshly. We want that pause from God. We speak about that's one of His highest traits, and our whole work is to emulate God.
No, I'm laughing because I took a screenshot of it, and it's on my phone. What you just said, and then I'm like, where'd I get that? Like Adrian Gold Davis.
But what does it say?
Between stimulus and response.
It's Viktor Frankl.
Oh yeah.
God's
my phone.
search for meaning. It's
Man's search for meaning.
Man's search for meaning, which is he's the founder of logotherapy. Talk about therapists. I mean, he came out of Auschwitz and he created a therapy that's based on finding meaning everywhere. It's like very, very powerful coming from him.
He said, "Man can endure any what if he has a why."
Love that.
Something like
yes, exactly.
if he has
okay, so we're trying to lengthen the response between stimulus and response. Okay, so this on the outside, going back to Marcy, because you were so spot on with a person that's very reactive and might be, you know, projecting a lot, right? That person might seem, I don't know, it just might get further in life. But from Judaism, that's not very impressive, okay? Because done well, when someone actually lengthens that pause, right? I mean, when done well, you can't tell that someone is working hard at it, okay? But sometimes we know from the inside, when we hold back a response, it actually takes a ton of self-control to even just withhold a word. So here is something that very practical that we could take home, okay? In any relationship, in any situation where you have something to say, before you say or do it, you have to pause Okay, Dana, you said wait is why am I even talking? No, wait. Why am I talking? Wait, why am I talking? Like ask yourself, okay, before you bark, before you just say it off. Isn't that good? Okay, so you're going to wait. And yeah, that's Rookie Covell for you. And so you're going to pause and you're going to just like not react. Okay, so this is what so hard. Okay. Yes.
Everybody, I just wanted to talk you off the subject. If anybody wants to get a real feel of what it was like in the Warsaw Ghetto, if you haven't read Mila 18 by Leon Uris, you will really get to understand a little bit of how it was, and I highly recommend it. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so back to, thank you for the break. So these are the words that while you're waiting, while you hold back and just ask yourself, why am I talking? Okay, these are the words that you need to ask yourself. What I'm about to say or do, will it bring me closer or further away from the person in front of me? Okay, so the way that that question is asked is either this or that. Either your response will bring you closer or your response will take you further away. Now, our response, by the way, because we're talking about speech and about silence, but much of our response is not even verbal. So think about even the way that you respond to, let's say, one of your children with judgment. You might not even say judgy words, but your body language shows judgment. So is that response going to bring you further or closer to the person in front of you? Well, it depends what you choose. Thank you for your honesty, Sadie. Okay, so let's also talk about a way to pause. Okay, so there's a really cute story here. It's a couple, it's a very well-known Jewish tale about a rabbi that's visited by a married couple that in his congregation, and they say, oh, we just can't get along. We're always yelling at each other. Please help us. So the rabbi looks at this couple. They're really going through a lot. And he slowly rises and he hands them a small vial, like a little test tube, okay, of water. And he says, this is holy water. They're getting all excited. And he says, it cures anger. Okay, just take this home with you. And and the couple is so excited. They're thinking, wow, finally, like our prayers are answered. They say to him, how does it work? Like, just tell us anything, we'll do it. And the rabbi instructs them in a grave tone of voice. He says, anytime you feel angry, take one drop of this holy water, put it on your tongue, close your mouth, and keep it there until your anger dissipates. The miracle water will help you find peace. May your efforts bear fruit. And the couple takes this little vial of water, they float home, and they have great results. Okay, so it's a joke, but really it's not a joke, because what is
That's
it?
a test tube baby.
So that those words that we talk about God, erech apayim, we want to channel that into our life, which is being slow to anger, lengthening the nose, whatever that means. Okay, yes? Pinocchio? Yeah. Okay, so there is another Jewish idea. Well, I don't know if this really ties in so much, but just about saying less. There's a very well-known idea to say less and do more, right? Omer ma'at v'aseh harbe. So that's brought down in different areas of the Torah. Like, let's say when Abraham said, oh, just wait here, I'm going to give you a little bit of bread, like to the angels that are passing by in the desert. This is like right after he had his circumcision. He's like, I'm just going to get you some bread. But what does he actually bring them? Like, each guest gets like their own tongue of a cow, and he's like shafting, slaughtering cows and koshering them and bringing them a whole, like, the delicacies, right? It's just, he said a little, but did a lot. So just bringing that concept of say less, do more. Okay. And then there's another example in the Torah about Jacob and his sons, and when Jacob gets on his deathbed. Okay. So now we have spoken in different classes, and especially during the Parsha, about, sometimes we question the parenting modules of the forefathers and foremothers. Like, it seems almost like, I don't know, they didn't have parenting courses back in the day. Okay, that's for sure. But on the deathbed, Jacob takes the opportunity to give rebuke to his kids. And he's speaking, there's the 12 tribes in front of him. He has to give them all the rebuke, and some of it was quite harsh. Now, you can look at all of the different chapters of their history, and you see that until that point, he doesn't rebuke his kids. He doesn't say anything. Like, and think about Jacob and his brother Esau. Jacob wanted to learn, and he was a pious man. He was a righteous person. But we know that Esau was a murderer. He was off doing no good. He was raping women. He was doing terrible things. Now, how did the parents deal with it? We look at the stories sometimes and we say, like, where were they as parents? Were they absent parents? Over here with this story, Rashi, the commentary, actually speaks about him waiting until he had their full attention on his deathbed to give the rebuke that he wanted to give them. Because there's also an idea that if your words are not going to land, you should not be giving them. This goes back to the topic of giving rebuke. Like, if you see something, should you say something, right? See something, say something. But sometimes if you know that it's not going to be well received, you actually shouldn't waste your breath. We're not supposed to be air conditioners, talking and sharing. Like, we think we need to fix our kids. How many years could we tell our kids what to do? Like, when are they actually, your son, your youngest, is now 13?
14.
14. Okay. Is your parenting over?
Oh no.
Oh no. Okay. Well, could you tell him what you think? And is he gonna say, okay, mom, and go do it?
It's a complex question.
It's a complex question.
Yeah. I could give a simple answer, but that's not.
Our parenting never ends.
No.
But it really does change.
Yeah.
So whereas obviously they know what you want. They know everything. They know your whole value system. Yeah. Right. So saying it again and again might actually, going back to that question, is what I'm about to say or do bring me closer or further apart? Sometimes saying it for the third millionth time is going to do more damage than good. You think they don't know?
Right.
There's so much more to communication, though. My kids always accuse me of giving them the look.
The look, right?
I don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
Right. So that's really something that you need to think about. Is the look judgment?
Oh, nice.
They're feeling judged.
Yeah.
Okay. It's such a hard thing. Some of us just have that look, right? It's just it's really hard to be there and not to respond. That's really,
and that's also tone in your voice.
Everything. You're dripping like with with judgment. So it is very hard. But there is this idea of not speaking if no one wants to hear.
Ellie, I loved your answer. Would you say that again?
The question, it's a complex question.
Wait, say what your answer was again?
It's complex.
It's complex. I love that answer.
I'm going to give you guys real life example that happens a couple times a year. So as you guys all know, a big part of my life is I lead women on trips. Okay, so this happens, I've been doing this for 12 years. So the trip that I'm about to lead next week will be my 15th Momentum trip. And then I've done a couple Poland, Israel trips, and we just did Morocco. It's probably close to 20 women's trips. So every single time, like, you'd think, girl, get used to it. Like, you're gonna rock this. It never gets easier. And for some reason, I walk into the home and I'm on a high, and I'm like, I've just learned and spent so much uplifting time in like holy places and prayer and like all this great stuff. I walk in the house, it's like everything that I've learned like goes out the window, and my judgment sets in. And it could be something as small as, walking into the house and the table is piled up with, I don't know, some garbage that they forgot to throw out.
Isn't it the thumb heard around the world?
when you come
Oh
home.
yes, it is the thud. What would we call it? The thud.
Yeah.
The
like you
thud
came
that's
home and
like all these ladies were like flying high with spirituality, touching the wall, and it's all good. And then we come home and we blow it. And I blow it every single time. Why can't I know already now. I'm gonna come back in 2 weeks from now. I'm gonna walk in the door. It's gonna be a mess. Okay. They are miserable. They've had frozen pizza for a week. They're not at their best. No one's in a good mood. I have to prepare myself, and yet every single time I can't hold back my judgment. I just drip with it. Why would you do that? Why would you? My friends that know me well for many years, they know that every single time I come home, there's a surprise waiting for me.
Yeah,
but it's not a surprise for me. Okay, it's actually the hardest thing. Every time I come back into the house, there's some project that my husband basically waited until I left the country. One time was, I kid you not, there was a hot tub inside my bedroom. Portland. So bad. I never got into that.
Seltzer fountain, right?
Cursed the hot tub. I was so mad because one Purim, my husband and all his friends went into the hot tub and they all came out with a terrible rash. I really cursed it because I was so mad. Why would you do that? But I was very lucky on the last trip, right? Gadi went easy on me. There was a soda machine in our room, literally a soda fountain that was built into the wall. I hope it's okay. It's your house. But there it is. Our dining room now. Okay? So why don't we just expect it and not lash out and I'm so judgy when it comes to the people that are nearest and dearest to me. Why would you do that? Why don't we just buy soda why can't we just be like everyone else? Use the soda stream. Why do we need a built-in fountain into the ground? So the question really is how to hold back, how to not just kind of react, how to drink that magic water and put it on our tongue how do we hold back that response? So without I don't know what it's gonna be. One time it was new furniture.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Don't do it.
I don't even want to ideas. What happened? Okay, we're gonna close up. I just let me close with a piece of profound wisdom. So just going back to Marcy, and I loved what you said. So introverts are more likely to think longer about the issues and process them internally. And only after hearing what others have to say and turning the idea over for a while in their heads, formulate an opinion that then has the greatest potential to be wise and well thought out. Okay. So this is a quote from Einstein. He says, "It's not that I'm so smart," right? He was a real communicator, and he was an introvert, okay, but brilliant, yes. So he says, "It's not that I'm so smart; it's that I stay with problems longer." Okay, so there's something literally just holding back, not interrupting, and not jumping into anything, but really holding back in the moment. And I'm going to end with something so profound over here. This is the wisdom of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. If you've ever heard of that kind of Judaism, they're all into joy and into there's no anguish in the world, and just fill yourself up with goodness. You guys, anyone, do you know some of the teachings of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov? So he says, in his youth, a person learns how to speak. In his old age, he learns how to keep silent. What a pity it is that we don't learn how to be silent before we learn how to speak. Sometimes our kids are our greatest teachers. So my oldest child, she is an introvert, right? I'm classic extrovert, she's classic introvert. And I once asked her, she had a meeting with somebody, it was a date, okay? She had a date with somebody, and I said to her, "So is it awkward?" Because I'm thinking talk. She's not that type of person. So he was a talky person, and she's okay with silence. So I said to her, "Was it awkward?" So she said to me such wise words, which I want to bring into so many different parts of my life. She says, "Mom, I don't do awkward. It's only awkward if you make it awkward. She's like, I don't do awkward. I'm okay with myself. I'm okay in the silence. What a gift that is. So I'm going to just teach one more line, and this is really the power of it all, the power of silence. So this is, I'm just trying to see where this is brought down. There is, I want to find the source to it. I'm not finding it right now. I will look it up. Every moment that a person shuts his mouth, he merits the hidden light that no angel or creature can conceive of. So this is, do you know who says that? One second, let me just find that quote.
Oh,
there we go. No, it's not here. I think it's the Igeret HaGra.
Oh, that's the Ramban.
It's the Rambam?
The Ramban.
The Ramban, yeah.
You want to repeat that?
Every
no,
moment that a person shuts his mouth, he merits the hidden light that no angel or creature can conceive of. Meaning, being in silence is one of the most powerful things you can ever do. Staying in, holding back the judgment, the whatever it is, the external, internal, whatever's going on, but holding back, refraining from speaking or acting or showing your disappointment of any sort is the greatest light that no angel can even get, because a human being has choice. And when we're accessing that choice, that free will, that's very, very hard to do, that self-control that we're accessing in that moment, right? We're actually, that's like really a very, very elevated way of being and living and moving through this world.
Something so can I share?
Totally.
Like I'm thinking about your Bobby, and I'm thinking about the times that we live in, where everyone's letting it all out, you know. But I don't think we could go back to the like bearing every single thing within ourselves. So I don't know if silence is like a total value for our culture. Mm-hmm. I think for this culture, it's more about how can the adult, the wise adult in me lead my show and communicate to my partner or communicate to my children or communicate to the people in my life what I'm experiencing. But if I don't authentically share what's honest and real for me, it will go in like a rusty nail and I'll be a mess. So I'm struggling with like, I hear everything. But I think this generation can't go totally silent because we live in too visceral and emotional world. All I'm saying is
finding the balance.
All I'm saying is that your child isn't like your inner child. You're angry, you're hurt, you're upset, you're feeling slighted, you're feeling invisible. The tantrumy part of you isn't running your relationships, but that the wise adult in you is saying, "Hey, that hurt. Like, hey, that this feels very judgmental," or "Hey, I feel really alone right now." So what's coming up for me is that there's a new way of being in the world that like marries the wisdom of Judaism with some of the realities that we experience now, which is I can't be Bobby. I had
this conversation yesterday with Rebecca Bassman, who's a leader here in the L'Chaim Center. We were walking out the door from an event last night, and we were talking about Pesach. And we were both like, we survived. Like that's that. And I said, 10 years ago, if someone would have said, how was Pesach? I would have said, it was amazing, right? And now I feel so much more like authentic that I could say it was really hard, actually. It was really long, 3-day concept. Right. But 10 years ago, I hear all my friends that, you see them in the supermarket afterwards. How did you do? How was Passover? And everyone's like, we got through it, And I said to Rebecca last night, I said, is it because we're so much more open and real with our emotions nowadays? Because there is a shift. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay. It's very normal to struggle, right? We're so much more real. And I think there actually is a very big shift. But wouldn't it be nice to kind of pull that back a little, not to pull back on our own truth or our authenticity, but to pull back on saying everything or
Automatic
needing
reaction.
automatic.
That
Like it's
automatic,
almost like
right.
like I
That
this is
automatic.
talking to me, by the way, this chapter on silence. I'm the one that doesn't think before speaking. I'm always doing damage control for like, did that actually just come out of my mouth? Oh my gosh.
That everything was just fine? Isn't that
No, but I mean, for me, this chapter is speaking volumes. So much of my work lies over here. This is where my work lies. Now, for someone else, their work might be to share their truth more. But I want to give all the people like me that are on the far extreme of we love to overshare. Whenever there's like group sharing, I'm like, I could totally dominate a conversation. Like that's not a good thing. And to pull back. What Judaism is telling us is find the right balance. Obviously, it's not saying shut up. It's saying like don't be so reactive. Erech HaChaim.
Right.
Be more like God. Take a walk around the block. Take a drink of water. Calm yourself down before you share. It doesn't say don't share. But when you share, it should be wise. It should be thought out. It should be with a lot more thought that goes into it than just. And I think it is a very hard balance in this generation and with different personalities. Everyone falls somewhere along this spectrum of either needing to pull back or needing to put forward, and we all need to find that right balance. Jen? No? Okay. Yeah. I was just gonna say something. First one from Allie, and then got reinforced many times from you. And I think with Yom HaShoah being here, I'm pretty sure it was Victor Frankel, right? That our choice to the pause. In the past? And the pause. In the pause. Yeah. So that's kind of what silence is all about, right? Is pausing and thinking before you speak. Right. Right. Which I'm guilty of not doing.
Right. That's like if your kids are having problems, something. Right. And my first reaction is always like, I'm gonna say anything I can to make them feel better and to like immediately try to fix it. And everybody has told me, don't do that. That's not, and they don't want to hear that. They just want you to listen and they want you to sit in silence. And I have a big problem with that because I always want to fix it. And everyone is that wrong, you're right, you're, you know. So that's
yeah, Susie.
I was gonna say too, it depends on the situation or what's going on inside you at that moment too. And that there's no harm in going back if you've spoken and say, you know what, I'm sorry, that came out late. Because that has a lot of news.
So powerful. Like those two words totally can change everything. Yeah. Little humility. Yeah.
My son once told me, Mom, did I ask? And that makes me think, and that makes me think sometimes before I say certain things. And this was probably maybe 5 years ago.
Wow.
You know, we tend to give advice or whatever, not asked for,
right.
Not needed.
Right.
I know myself today.
Yeah, Laura, the back.
About when how are you is an empty greeting and when it's a true question.
But say that again, sorry.
Wow. The phrase how are you? Like 99% of the time the answer is great and we really don't want anything more than that. And that sometimes it's a real question and it's kind of upsetting. Anyway, it's just sort of paper on it. I just think it's so funny.
So what do you mean? Like when someone asks how are you, they don't really care? Or it's just like a transaction.
When the answer, the only answer is good.
Right.
Right.
Even though it's not yes, but that kind of engages thing, as there's times how are you? Is meant as an invitation there.
Right. Well, here's another acronym for you, the WAIT. So we have the WAIT, why am I talking? And then I say fine, because how are you, Laura? How are you? Fine. So fine is feelings inside not expressed.
Yeah.
Right. So
because like, you know, nobody and no one even cares. How are you? Fine. You're already on to the next, you know, aisle of the supermarket. You're not even waiting for
how could I get an email? It's exactly about this. It's the crisis of living in a culture that feels one thing and says another. it's such an interesting article. So I want to send it to you so you can send it to
everybody.
the group.
Sure.
Super.
Okay. First of all, thank you everybody for staying a little late. We started minutes late. Just a few technical things. So first of all, next week, Ali is going to be teaching the class, and it's going to be on Yom Ha'atzmaut on the topic of Israel. Come with your questions, and it'll just be so
I need
nice.
to preface by saying I ain't no expert, but I'll do my best. No, I'm really not. Actually, I'm not, but I'm going to just.
So that's next Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday, I do get back on the following Wednesday. So Gadi will be giving the next class for me.
So you bring soda, seltzer for everybody. Only if it's at the house.
Yeah. So I'll ask him what his, maybe someone can text me and prepare me so I have the proper response. Okay. Yeah.
I got it.
Okay. Well, I didn't even had a consistent because
that was not easy for you.
I think you're speaking to me. The cameras.
E.J. Coleman, just one-third his first book, coming to speak here for the Wheel of Wisdom at 7:30 at 7:30. Listen, tonight, men, women, you could bring, your teen kids, it doesn't matter any age. It's actually speaking on the topic of getting up after grieving. So if it's something that you're ready to hear, please come tonight. And Thursday night, as I said, Rosh Chodesh. Because Doris actually just left, but Shane is still here. Oh, and in honor of Yom HaShoah, and in honor of the 3 docents that took L'chaim Center, we had about 65 people that went to the Holocaust Museum last Sunday. So in their honor and in honor of Yom HaShoah, we are sponsoring this week's Kiddush, and everyone please join us, but just to honor all the holy souls that have perished, to honor our amazing in-house docents. Join us.
And 3 people, and they listen. Nobody said straight. So that's it. I am. And I just so many problems. It's like you're switching from and I had to wash my hair. But I was weekend with women and switched their house and their families, etc. So we were lucky we had everyone the right name, everything's right. So we couldn't even answer. Everything's fine.
No, I got it. We want to know. Nothing too exciting. Family's good. That's really important. I mean, everything's good for you. Are you coming from? Yeah. I love this. I like the end of it.
I understand because like my daughter's
yeah, I've been
and she has some medical problems. And so I recognize that I am just when it comes to right. You know, I don't think they're it's better than some, but not as good as